All right, friends. So, today we start a new sermon series which talks about the body, the mind, and the soul. And so as we talk about these topics in the next couple of weeks, we've got to start by talking about what's the basis of this whole series. The basis of it is that it's called holistic, the formal title would be the holistic human, a term that we have in seminary and also in medicine and many other fields that describes taking care of the whole person, the mind, body, and soul, all components that make up ourselves. And so let's go back to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we're going to talk about some of the things that go wrong when we focus on just one part of ourselves at the extent of the others. And so, Mr. Arnold up there, plenty of muscles, right? The stereotype that tends to come to folks that focus too much upon their body is that they put all their efforts into training that, to be muscular, to be fit, to look good, to compete in contests. And the stereotype that comes with that is that there's not a whole lot going on between the ears. That you train so much on the body that not much happens. You can't even get your shoulder or your ear touched because you have too much muscles up here in that neck of yours. And so, if we focus too much just on the body, whether it's physical training, on food, or anything else, we can lose touch with our minds and our souls in the process. Overemphasizing on any of these elements tends to have the same result of diminishing the whole person at the extent of one aspect of ourselves. And so, there is the overemphasis of the body. But what about the mind? Sometimes when we have an overemphasis of the mind, we have these images of folks that are the eggheads, those that are too smart, nerdy, and the like. And so we have this fine gentleman up here with those token nerdy glasses to go with. The stereotype that comes with that, the overemphasis of knowledge and wisdom, is the extent that we no longer focus on the body or the soul. The emphasis is upon finding and figuring out facts, proving theories, and the like. And so some of the things that go along with overemphasizing of the mind is that your body also bears that. You're not so physically trained. And so one of the stereotypes is that, well, those that are incredibly smart may not have the physical stature to do a whole lot. Or likewise, they diminish emphasis on the soul with an emphasis upon facts, upon science. And they diminish the idea of a spiritual reality and the need for it. But again, there's also overemphasizing of the soul. Hard to believe, but it can also remove you from an existence within your body, an appreciation for the senses that we have, the body that is ours, because we think about just heaven, getting rid of this flesh bag known as our bodies, and just truly thinking about what lies ahead. Moreover, what does knowledge matter? Because we're going someplace else in which all truth will be revealed. But that disconnects you from your existence here on earth, which is in a body, which has a mind and a soul. And so with all of that before us, we're not trying to say that one is better than the other, but that all three are who you are, who I am, and who every person on earth is. And so we have a better relationship between our minds, our bodies, and our souls. We live a better existence, and through that relationship, we can preach, teach, and be better examples of who God has called us to be. And so, friends, today as we begin by talking about the body, let's go to God's Word and see what He has in store for us today. Now, friends, both our lessons come from Paul's first letter to the church in Corinth, to the Corinthians. And here he is dealing with a population that does have an issue with the body. Historically, the Corinthians had, well, a little bit of an obsession with the body. And so Paul, as you probably picked up here, the word probably jumped out to you. Paul talks about the body is not to be used for sexual immorality. That was Corinth's issue. In spite of being certainly within the Roman culture, even the Romans had to gag a little bit about what was happening in Corinth, friends, just to give you an idea of some of the things happening here. And so when Paul writes about the body, this is some of the background of what he is writing to. So that's why it shouldn't sound out of character when Paul calls that out. He's literally identifying this as an issue for the Corinthians and something they should help to correct as part of their Christian faith. But for us as we go here, we want to start on the basis of what is the body in the whole grand scheme of the gospel, of the good news, and of salvation. For Paul, it's in verse 19 of the 6th chapter of his letter. He says, to his audience, don't you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? Other translations talk about the temple of God. And I think on that basis, we can begin to understand what this body, what these arms, hands, fingers is all about. Because your body is your temple, by which you go about understanding and experiencing your mind and your soul. Without your body, how would you know anything else? It's your senses. It's your eyes to perceive the world. It's your nose to smell something both delicious and something foul. It's the ability to hear each other, like we are now. Your mind very well couldn't exist without the senses, for how could it see anything to understand? How could it hear anything to put words and ideas together if it wasn't for your body? And so if your body is your temple, then we have to understand how that relates to our worship of God. For Paul's use of temple was certainly deliberate. He's coming from a Jewish tradition, friends. And so when he talks about temple, he's not talking about the everyday Jewish synagogue here. He's talking about an allusion to the temple, the Jewish temple which existed as the primary place of all the major rituals, sacraments of their order. And so if our bodies then are our temple that we worship God, then we can kind of begin to understand that. Now, as Christians, we're a bit separate from the idea of one place to do these major rituals. So we have many churches which all of our sacraments can occur in. We can have weddings and funerals and baptisms and many other things within our individual churches. It's not like we have to go to one special United Methodist church to have our holiest of rituals. We can celebrate that here. But even on that basis, we can understand as Christians that we kind of want to take care of our temple, right? I mean, you don't want to go into a church that's a hair away from being a ruin, right? You really don't want to walk in and say, that wall is going to collapse on me. It's a good thing I am saved then, because if it falls down while I'm worshiping, at least I'm going to the right place. But instead, we do want to see structures that are well cared for, that are clean, that show good intention, that people care about their building. So we see before us even today, stained glass windows, flowers in and around and on top of the altar, showing an appreciation for this building and what happens in it, to show people who walk in, this is a place that matters to us. If we take the same principle and apply that to how we take care of ourselves, how we see ourselves, the body, the temple by which we interact with the whole world, then indeed we have something to talk about. But if our bodies are temple, then we should probably take good care of it, right? Further up in this first reading, Paul talks about that he's kind of having this theoretical argument with someone. Someone's saying, well, hey, I'm allowed to do anything I want. And Paul says, well, sure. I'm not going to argue with you. Not everything is good for you. Now, if we think about that with how we treat our bodies, don't we understand that all too well, right? I mean, we can do what we want with our bodies. We can feed it what we want. We can give it as much or as little sleep as we care to, but that's not always a good thing. In fact, when I was reading over that, what came to mind was, well, our bodies naturally want three things in particular. Our bodies love fat, salt, and sugar. But a pure diet of those three things will get you an early ticket to heaven and an escape from this world. That's for sure. And so Paul's thing rings true. Those things that we want to do aren't always to our benefit. In the same way, we can take care of our bodies or just sit there and let them go by the wayside. We can say, well, I need to put in extra hours of work and take away from my time to sleep, my time of relaxation, my time to turn my mind and my body off. But it's not always to our benefit. And in fact, we live in a culture which emphasizes the sacrificing of our bodies for other efforts and experiences. We're told, well, if you're not working 40 plus hours a week, then you're not really working. You should be out there. You should be doing more. Otherwise, you're not really working to the best of your ability. But that doesn't have an appreciation or a care for our bodies. Instead, we're told to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week to be a contributing member of society. But that doesn't care for this, folks. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, well, you're not going to be working even 20 hours a week when you're in the hospital. That's not how it works. Instead, there needs to be a caring for this temple that we can give. God has given it to us from birth, but He's left it up to us to care for it, to nurture it, to give it the right amount of sleep, to give it activities so that it is made well. And so if we have this body as a temple, and we do intend to take care of it, then we actually have to. We have to give ourselves the true amount of rest, right? That 8 hours that we claim and lie to ourselves and to our doctor that, yeah, doc, I get my 8 hours of sleep every day. You betcha. But if we're honest with ourselves, it's something we can work because our bodies are our means of interacting not only with God, but each other, spouses, our neighbors, and even the strangers that we meet out in the world. If we're not taking care of this, how can we expect to be good and fit witnesses of God's grace? Moreover, we're calling others to worship God, but we're kind of fallen by the wayside physically. It's not good for us. And so it brings me to this last illustration by Paul in our second lesson out of 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Here, of course, is an example Paul is giving to show that our bodies as temples can also be trained for more effective service in God's kingdom. He uses the example of a runner in a race. And he sets out the basic premise that a lot of people run in a race, but not everybody wins the prize. In Paul's example here, there's one winner. The person who crosses that line first gets the prize. And he gives the example of the person who would get a crown. Now, it's not a crown of gold, folks. It's not, the chance to bite that first place medal to figure out if it's gold or not. Here we're talking about a wreath, which, as he says, passes away. But ours, the crown we seek after as Christians, is not one that passes away with time, but lasts forever. He's talking about that goal, the end goal that we have been promised of eternal life, when we have been faithful to God here on earth. And so his thing isn't to run like a runner trying to win just fame and glory, but we're running towards the finish line because we've been convinced that God is real, that Jesus is the one who saves us from all our sin, and now we can run towards that finish line. As I said in the children's message, I had a chance to practice what I preached there in a very literal way. So, of course, Pastor Rick's going to talk about running today, right? In that example, you do have to train yourself. Like I said with the children, it's one of those that you have to have run once before. You have to train yourself. You can't just walk out on the course and expect to win. You can have all the drive and passion you want, but if you do not have the training, you're done. You're not crossing that line. They're going to be carrying you off, folks. But instead, if we put ourselves to the task, say, the race is ahead of me. It's my job to train and be ready and effective for it. Then you're going to go out there. You're going to run. You're going to start off small. You're going to start off running a half mile, a mile, getting your body used to the activity, used to huffing and puffing, going up those hills and on those downhills until your body becomes accustomed to it. And once it's been trained, you go on to run more and more miles. You give yourself a tougher challenge day after day until you're able to accomplish the task, until you're out there running and you're excited to get to that finish line, excited and driven to head towards first place because that's what you want. As Christians, it's not a matter of being the best disciple of Jesus Christ. We're not in a competition with each other. We're not going to have a first place poll of who's the best Christian at St. Paul United Methodist Church. Instead, we're going like people who are going to win the race because we want to be the best possible witnesses to Jesus Christ that we can be. Because that's the goal. And if we have that drive, then we will be effective witnesses. But it starts right here. Do we care for ourselves? Because we're not going to be able to do much if we aren't trained and ready to go. And our bodies have a role in that. Because if you think about it, our bodies and our actions are the first thing people see. Beyond words, it's what we can do that also shows this world what we believe. And so we think about examples of, well, if we train our bodies for better service, whether it's through lifting weights, doing yoga, or any activity, we have the means to be better people. And so when our friends or neighbors say, hey, I'm moving, would you mind helping me? Well, if we've never lifted a thing in our lives, it might be a little difficult. But if we have given ourselves over to training, then we can say, sure, I'll help you lift that couch. Sure, I'll help you move that cabinet. I'll help you lift those boxes of books to help you and to show you that I'm neighborly, that I'm kind and generous. Friends, there's a lot of ways we can use these bodies that God has given us in great service of Him. By training these bodies, by building them up, we can show others through our actions how great and good God is. And so, friends, I invite you to serve and honor the Lord your God through your body, because your body is your temple. Because as you take care of it, you allow yourself to train it up for better service for God, yourself, and your neighbor. And so, go out there, enjoy and experience the Lord your God with the senses you've been given. Enjoy the experiences you find, and give God the glory through your body. Amen. Amen.